everyone. We have come to the last session, the panel discussion number 5 of the day. So, here our speakers will be focusing on how to value IP and other intangible assets. For this session, we have our beautiful moderator, Adriana Claudia de Moura. She's the IP Corporate and Tax Regional Manager from Nidec Global Appliances, Brazil. And our speakers are Taruna Gupta, Head of IP Governance, Training and Assessment, Tata Consultancy Services, India. And then we have Alexander Gangnus. He's the Manager IP Consulting at Dennemeyer, Germany. And finally, we have Ming, the Senior Director of IP, Legal and Business Development, GenEditBio Limited, China. So, Adriana, I'll hand over the session to you so that you can move forward.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. As Nidec just mentioned, I'm Adriana Moura. Oh, didn't start. Oh my goodness, yeah. Okay. Let's wait.
Can everyone hear Adriana?
Yes?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Adriana, please take it over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I believe now we are really starting. So good day, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. My name is Adriana Moura. I'm the head of IP Corporate in Nidec Global Appliance. We are a group of 330 companies dedicated to develop motors. And today I'm pleased to have here three of my colleagues, Ming, Taruna Gupta and Alexander Gangnus, and we will speak about how to evaluate IP assets and other intangible assets. I believe that we discussed it briefly, and I will just introduce the topic. And besides the fact other intangible assets, only Alexander will bring something that can vary from the discussion that we are more focusing in. I'm really a fan of patents, and I just discovered that Ming is also a really fan of patents, specialized in drug patents as well. So it's really nice. And to briefly introduce, I'd like to bring one case that I have worked, and yeah, it's nice that then Alexander will come back. I will bring to you a case that I worked in some years ago. So the case, I will not say the names, but we will be able to get all the features that is important to us, to our discussion. So a professor just opened a company, a startup in the university in Brazil, a public university in Brazil. And he started to discuss with a second professor who has also a really small startup. They decided to join forces, and they presented to us. I was working for a VC company. They presented to us the project of the two companies and also the portfolio of their patents, and they were asking us for $10 million. So we started the discussions, and basically what we did, apart from the evaluation of the flow, the cash flow, and everything that we could get in terms of financial and commercial responses, if we could bring this company to the effective operation. We started also to look at the patents. So at the time they had 25 applications, not in Brazil. This is something that sometimes people think that I'm really skeptical, but I do prefer to start from outside and just at the end to enter in Brazil, because we have a really restricted law. So this was one of the key features that made us to evaluate in a good way the portfolio that they had. We joined the companies as our proposal to invest in them. We started from 25 million, so it was almost the double of they were asking at the time. And we did this not only because of the cash flow, a projection that we had, but also because we had a really beautiful scenario when we were just projecting the landscape, the patent landscape. So what is the meaning of my discussion here and why I'm bringing this? Because valuation is really an important tool, and every company should be able to run at least a previous or a summary methodology of valuation. I think this is essential for business purposes as well. But we do not need to discourage the people to keep themselves willing to improve the patents, meaning this company, we invested 25 million, as I just mentioned, and we sold that the same company for $100 million 2 years after. So this is something that we could get because we had not only the cash flow, but also the projection of the future demands that the portfolio of patents would be able to respond to. So this match is really incredible. We can promote everything if you have the intelligence to unite the both sides, so the financial and the R&D, and bringing them together to work and to say to speak in the same language, which is the language of business. So valuation is not something, at least in my perception, it's not something that needs to be carried out of the technical specifications. It's quite the opposite. But of course, I'm talking about biotech in this case. But this is something that I'm always looking to. So part of our discussion today would be how to evaluate, which are the trends in evaluation, which are the key aspects for the segments that Taruna and Ming has worked for. So this is what we will discuss. But I will start from Alexander. Alexander, I know that it's not the first time that I see you speaking about valuation. And as I just said, I'm really fan. And just trying to move out of this specific sort of IP assets for valuation. And I do know that you have great experience with many clients. What can you tell us about your perception in which are the hottest trends for valuation in the future?
Well, thank you for that great question, Adriana. So, big trends. I would say definitely one trend that also finds its way into IP valuation is definitely sustainability and ESG. Environmental, social, and governance regulations. For example, in the EU, we have a dedicated regulation on reporting on these ESG standards, and it becomes more and more important for companies to document what they are doing in these fields. And also, for example, for startups, it's a great way. Also, the whole ESG and sustainability wave, I would call it, the buzzword around the buzz around these buzzwords, so to say, is a great way also to maybe realize some additional views and additional potential in also in its value creation, because we have many across the world, many startups that are really active in this impact of sustainability fields. And we know that that impact and sustainability is definitely one value driver, so that the sustainable technologies are usually valued higher. And so why not use that, or why not factor that into an IP valuation model as well? And that is possible within the given frameworks. So we do, so maybe just taking a small step back, also to pick up those maybe from the audience who are not that familiar with IP valuation. There are three basic approaches. The first one is the cost approach, where you say, okay, everything that I've invested in my IP and what it costs to maintain it is also the value. That is usually math. It's a very short-looking perspective, because you can never compare, or you can never derive a value out of pure costs. The second is the market approach, where you look at comparable transactions or comparable cases, but with the nature of IP being quite unique, typically it's hard to find something that is really comparable. especially in the field of patents. For trademarks, for example, there is a way sometimes of using a market method. When you, for example, look at a branded product and unbranded product, the same specifications, then you can make an estimated calculation on how much does the brand really contribute to the value that you can realize, for example, in the sales price of a product. But typically in IP valuation, we are trying to adopt an income approach. So we are looking at what is the future income that is possible to be realized based on the IP that you have. And here also we can take the sustainability into account, because we can assume that typically sustainable technology will have higher income potential. So when we are taking this look at this future income, it is easy for us to factor in the factors, so to say, that gives a certain bonus, so to say, on sustainable technologies. And we do that, for example, by mapping the portfolio against the 17 UN Sustainability Development Goals. So it's a global initiative from the United Nations, and they are they are setting out goals for sustainable development. Can be, for example, climate technology or reducing global warming, clean water for everybody on the world, but also goals like offering education or gender equality and things like that. That is also these are also goals to foster, so to say, a sustainable development and to enable prosperity and peace in the world. And there are many solutions that factor in or that can make use then or that fall under these goals. For example, I now have a valuation project with a startup that has a very high efficiency climate technology method. And they can use this for air condition, for heating, for ventilation, for everything. And they of course, they have, and all of this with zero global warming potential. That's the benefit, that's the USB of their technology. So they can have a benefit also of this sustainability aspect in their valuation. And there are many other ways on how to factor this into always the standard framework that you have mostly when it comes to IP valuation. One other trend that I see more and more evolving is also IP-backed loans and financing, especially in the US. That's also something where you can really use IP as a collateral for getting a financing from the bank. It's really a developing topic at the moment, but it's getting more traction. And for this, of course, you also need solid IP valuation models then, because you need to put a price tag, so to say, on each and every portfolio part. So that is from my side about the trends that are currently here in this field of IP valuation.
Thank you. So Taruna, as we are just discussing here about key factors and to drive innovation, what can you tell us about the valuation of software technology?
Thanks for that, Adriana, and pleasure to be here with all of you today. So I'll start by talking about some of the challenges that we took into consideration while coming out with a systematic methodology to evaluate IP and specifically patents. So adding to what Alexander mentioned, there are a good number of factors that all of us as IP practitioners take into consideration. Especially when it comes to software, one of the key aspects that is very important is that there is a lot of technology advancement moving at a very fast pace, and one needs to make the most of IP while it is relevant. So the shelf life of the IP is definitely a very important factor for its valuation. In addition to the rapid technology change, the other aspects that we typically take into consideration is what is our business model, the go-to-market business model to take these inventions or IP to various parts of the world, and hence the globalization aspects, the dynamic pricing strategies, the ease of infringement, and uncertainties in regulatory protection of software and its related IP. All of these become very important factors. Among the approaches that Alexander mentioned, the income-based, the market-based, and all the other approaches that all of us as practitioners are aware of, we decided to come up with something that is a good hybrid of all of these, taking the factors that I just mentioned, and also keeping in mind that digital transformation of all industries makes software IPR exponentially more valuable. When we're looking at evaluating the software invention from a monetization perspective or a valuation perspective, and then with a forward looking view into how to take it to the market, typically we would like to look at it from two different dimensions. Alexander mentioned the sustainability aspect from the ESG angle. What I'd like to talk about is the sustainability of invention in terms of how futuristic it is, how agile it is, how resource efficient it is, and how adaptable it is. And also, one more aspect like I would like to add at this point is the commercial viability of the invention in terms of how quickly it can be operationalized, made relevant to customers, and profitably delivered to a large, fast growing market. After hearing Ming's views, I would also like to come back to this point and share our views on how we came up with the model and how we tested the same with various forms of IP in the organization. So, over back to you, Adriana, and over to you, Ming.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe that, Ming, we can just jump in part of the discussions that we had earlier today, because we were discussing about drivers and also something that Taruna just bring up the discussion, which is the commercial availability. And I do know that from the drug scenario, sometimes we have really great promises, but we do not have everything in a proper way that we can say we do have the patent. Maybe we just have the truth to get something that is amazing and you can bring to the market. So what can you tell us about how the valuation will be differ from something that is just in the beginning and something that has already some structure in terms of patent portfolio? Or what can you tell us about? I will not design everything, but just to get your feedback on this. What do you think? I believe she's frozen. Yes. Okay, so just we need to anticipate something here in improvise. Alexander, I will come back to you again, because we just need to wait for Ming, so when she come back. I do know that I just mentioned something that sometimes it's important to have, and Taruna was also mentioning about the commercial availability. When we are just discussing about practical do's and don'ts, what would you say it's essential for IP practitioners to take care to consider when we are talking about value? Oh, Ming, sorry.
Oh, yeah. So
Did you hear me when I posed the questions or no?
Yeah, I heard you. And I would like to talk about key factors about the valuation of drug IP. Actually, the IP protection is central for drug research and development and commercialization. So the quality of the IP is very important for the value of the drug. As we go on to assess the patents of the pharmaceutical product, we will normally classify the drug patents into the core patents and the secondary patents. The core patents is for example, for small molecule drugs. The core patents is the patent protecting the compounds of those drugs. For example, the Marcouche compound patent or the specific compound patent. And for large molecules, it usually relates to the patents that protects the specific sequence for those drugs. And the secondary patents involves, for example, the formulation patents, the manufacturing methods of patents. And the core patents are usually of very high value, and the secondary patents are of less value. Moreover, we will go on to analysis the patent term of those patents and the territories, the legal status, the protection scope, the stability of those patents, and we also going to analysis if that drug have a nice IP portfolio, and will elongate the drug life cycle with a good patent protection. And moreover, we will not only analyze the IP itself. The value of the IP actually is highly dependent upon the value of the pharmaceutical product itself. So we will also going to do some business analysis. For example, we will see if the drug will have whether the drug itself has the potential to become a blockbuster, whether it will sell $1 million a year or it will sell $1 billion a year. So actually, we will do some market analysis to see if it has a very large market size and whether it meets unmet medical needs, whether it have current popular therapeutic methods. And we'll also do some competitive analysis to see if it has currently developing competing products. In the third place, we will do some strategic analysis. For example, if the drug has the possibility of form a combo therapy with another drug, and it has a very nice synergy with the licensee. In that case, the licensee may pay a very high price for this synergetic product. If it is a platform technology, the buyer may be willing to enter into a new field, and in that scenario, he will be sometimes willing to pay a much higher price. In the first place, a very important aspect for the valuation of IP is the technology itself, and we'll also do some technology analysis to see whether the drug has a good potential to become marketed, to become to enter into the market. If it is a preclinical drug, usually it has a quite low value, and if it enters into clinical phase, its value will go up exponentially. And if it has entered into NDA filing stage, or it hits the market, then its value is quite large. Moreover, we usually build a financial model to see whether it has high potential to be profitable, and we also analyze the return on investment and how long it will take to recover the investments. As Alexander described this cost approach. So when we make the investment decision or to do the valuation of the IP, we will compare the cost of in-house research and development and the cost of the licensing. We also compare the price of the deal to another comparable deal in the market. If the market is really hit and the similar products has a very high price, then the valuation of this IP usually is quite high. And finally, the legal aspect matters to the structure deal. The structure of the deal may sometimes be very flexible, and some deal have will pay a lot of money in the upfront payment, and others may have a low amount in the upfront payment part, but the royalty is quite high. So it really depends on how you negotiate in the deal.
Thank you. So I will get back to you, Alexander, but I will rephrase what I just mentioned when we started asking the second question. So we just heard from Ming about the aspects of the valuation, and she was telling something that I think that we can add, because we just spoke about software, and we spoke about drug, so the pharma market, and I was telling a little bit about a biotech case. So you have, and you told about ESG, so sustainability. You have a lot of topics that we could just carry on and talk for maybe more 3 hours, but I believe that we can say something that might be common in terms of do's and don'ts when we are evaluating these markets and the technologies inside of each of these markets. What can you tell us about it?
So, because we have heard so many different views and different approaches and different particularities, I think it is the most important do is you have to be sure why you do an IP valuation and with what objective and in what industry you do it. And then based on that, choose the right method, because every method that I described or that you all described in the beginning has its legitimacy and it has the right scenarios where to use it. For example, a market approach is very well suited for every occasion where you really have comparable values. And I think, for example, in pharma, that might be the case where you might have, comparable, at least comparable drugs or comparable applications or things like that. So where you really have a benchmark and a comparable perspective, so to say. And also a cost approach may also be applicable in certain scenarios. For example, when you have what I get every now and then, the inquiry is that you have two startup founders, they want to exit and now they do not know how to value the IP and how to distribute among themselves who should pay what. And then it might be okay to use a cost approach to say, okay, and add up what have we really spent on the IP, and now then make a good separation then as soon as everybody goes their separate ways. So really, you always have to always need to figure out why you want to do an evaluation with what objective in the end. So do you need it for an internal assessment? Do you need it for an M&A project? Because then you also have different levels of how accurate you have to be or what data you have to use and factor in. So this is really these are two critical cases, or not two critical cases, but rather two critical questions that have to be answered in the beginning. And definitely something that needs to be observed also is that please forget objectivity and please try to forget your own estimation of value, because there is no such thing as an objective value. This bottle in my hand might be worth a lot to me because I'm thirsty at the moment and I want to drink something. But if I pass it on to my colleague in the next office, she has a different value for this bottle. And it's the same for IP. A pharma patent in my hands is not that valuable because I'm not an expert. I don't know how to commercialize it. I can maybe sell it to somebody else. But then maybe a software patent in Taruna's hands is worth a lot more also than in Ming Wu's hands. So it's always about, there is no objective value, but there's always a contextual value, and IP valuation is highly dependent on the context. If you plan to further commercialize the IP that you're evaluating yourself, or if you have a transfer value scenario where somebody else commercializes the IP, and depending on that, the value changes, and also the input into a valuation model changes as well. Because as I often put it quite radically, every IP valuation, especially when you do it according to the income methods, is a garbage in, garbage out calculation. So if you put unrealistic and irrelevant numbers into the calculation model, the model itself can be as sophisticated as you want it to be, but still you won't get any meaningful thing out of it, because if you do not choose the right method, the right context, and the right assumptions, then you will also not get a realistic value out of it in the end. So that is really something that needs to be considered. However, one of, I think, the most important do for me is be courageous and just start trying. I mean, the basic valuation that can be done by almost everybody with an IP background and maybe a little bit of business calculation experience. An easy discounted cash flow model based on future income projections, what you think your IP might be, that your IP might generate in the future. That is really easily doable. I mean, sometimes there are even software on the web that helps you doing these valuations, and yeah, so this is good for your own orientation. Be courageous, try it out. Of course, if you need to do it with a third party involved, for example, in an acquisition scenario, or if you want to get an investment, then you should better have a independent third-party opinion, and also then with maybe a little bit larger the report according to norms and standards. Also, of course, then because of neutrality and credibility.
Yes, that's true. I do have a few histories and cases in which the sensitive of the case and the people bringing the topic so personally to them, what's kind of hard to present the final value. And I fully agree with you. We do need to have a total.
In the end, especially if you work with startups or small inventor, everybody, and that is completely fair, everybody thinks that she or he has invented the next big thing, and that is worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. But still, unfortunately, this is often not the case, because there are, I mean, when we do the IP valuations, we have around roughly 25 factors that we assess. And to really be the next big thing, you would have to be good at each and every of these factors, and you would have to have really great business projections upcoming. And yeah, I have not yet seen that, to be honest, because there's in every portfolio, in every idea, in every, be it the business case, there's always something where you need to at least double check, and where you then have some kind of a downer, that it's in the end, unfortunately, not the next big thing.
Thank you. So Taruna, we were just discussing so many things, and I found so funny our discussion so far. But what can you tell us? Maybe you can share with us a case that you have, maybe a case for a single patent valuation, or a group of patents, a family patent. I do not know. What can you share with us?
Sure. Thanks. So I'll take forward what Alexander was mentioning. I completely agree with every point, because that is what you will hear in my articulation next. So as a large enterprise, which I represent, we essentially are talking in the context of a B2B software enterprise. And as you can imagine, we develop software for various industries. So we develop software for the manufacturing industry, we develop software for the banking industry, and across different globes. There's some software that would run across US, Europe, and India, and then there's another kind of software that is centric to a particular region. So the kind of experience that Alexander was referring to, taking into consideration that a valuation model needs to cater to all those different kinds of scenarios, and also needs to bring together some kind of a rationalization. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say that there are a set of inventors in a particular domain developing IP in that particular domain. Let's say it is a banking experts who are developing a particular invention that then lends itself to IP protection. And then on the other side, you have the manufacturing team that is coming out with new models and new processes and new inventions. Now, how do you create a binder across all of this? So do you have a valuation model that takes into considerations software that has been developed for the banking industry, software that has been developed for the manufacturing industry, and can you apply a model that will serve for all these different kind of inventions? So the kind of thought process that we had was, let us bring together a set of parameters and say that, okay, I mean, a particular invention, is it forward looking? Is it looking at the future needs of the market, looking at future trends in technology, and then keeping that future aspect in mind, creating novelty at the present time to address it. So one is the anticipativeness of the invention. The other aspect is the agility aspect. So as market trends change, as technology trends change, how broad is the invention to be able to respond to fast changing inputs. So that is the agility aspect. And the third being the efficiency aspect, which is basically to say that when there are less resources at hand, either in the form of hardware resources or the number of people that are involved in that particular implementation of the invention, how does the invention cater itself to becoming more and more efficient? Keeping the anticipativeness, the agility, and the efficiency aspects in mind, while I was referring to the sustainability attributes earlier, and then coming to the commercialability aspect, there are different parameters that come into the picture. For example, does the invention utilize or create state of the art technology? Are there new processes being created? Is there more elastic infrastructure being used? So that is a technology aspect and a technology advancement. On the other hand, the context aspect that Alexander spoke about, does the contextual knowledge of customers, industry players, business domain, all of this be considered when we're coming out with a value for that particular context? And then how are we taking these inventions to the market, either in the form of a global strategy or in the case of, let's say that we're targeting it to a particular segment in the market. Now, all of these coming together, whether it is the technology aspect, the context aspect, or the GTM aspect, the final outcome that the business is looking for is the IP generating value for the business. So the first three that I mentioned are definitely the lead attributes, whereas the outcome aspect is a lag measure of the invention's impacts. And essentially the model that we are trying to place here needs to be able to derive the base value of the invention, and also one that can be looked at or revisited every quarter or every 2 quarters to see how the rate of change is becoming an aspect to keep it more and more relevant. So I would sum this up by saying that the valuation of the IP, one, needs to be aligned to the business strategy, the sales and marketing aspects, the operations aspects, and also needs to take into consideration other elements such as is the invention unique, or is it going to be easy for your competitor to develop a similar invention by incremental innovation? All these factors put together would lead us to a point where one would have a hybrid approach, taking into consideration the income aspects, the market aspects, and all the other aspects that Alexander was referring to.
Oh, thank you so much, Taruna. So Ming, I believe that there is something that I'm really curious to talk with you about, because you just mentioned about the type of patents, and then you told also something about the level of maturity of the technology. So you have something that is just in the preclinical trials, something it's in clinical trials. But what can you tell us about, for example, when we are just talking about a new career to deliver the drug to a specific site? Or what can you tell us about personalized medicine? Because when we are discussing drug market, sometimes we are talking about, we have a huge number of people suffering for something, for example, diabetes. We do know it's something that is higher and higher, the index of people suffering from this disease. We also know a lot about neurological disease. But sometimes it's not only about the drug itself, but also the proper career to deliver the drug inside. So from your perspective, what can you tell us about the job that you are performing in GenEditBio? So what can you say, how, if you do use this process of valuation when we are licensing or not, and also when we are facing something that is enabling technology, how do you handle this inside?
Thank you for asking. Actually, what you mentioned just now is basically the two fundamental technology platform that GenEditBio is doing. The one is the pharmaceutical itself. What we do is gene editing therapeutic methods, and the other part is the delivering methods. What we currently use now is the lipid nanoparticle, which is LNP delivery methods. And for the first part, we are doing the gene editing methods ourselves, so we can do license out. And for the other part, the delivery methods, we are not inventorying the IPs in-house. We are doing the licensing. So what we do now involves both the licensing and the license out. And so interestingly, we can observe the fundamental parts both as the licensee and as the licensor. And I found that from the licensor's perspective and the licensee's perspectives sometimes not quite the same. And I would like to share with you that a little bit about the key considerations for IP valuation from a licensor's perspective versus a licensee's perspective. For the licensee's perspective, first of all, we will we'll do the valuation for the technology from both the technology perspective and the business perspective. I think we have talked a lot about these aspects previously, and I would talk more about the IP perspective. When we do a licensing project, we will do a very careful analysis of the IP ownership and the for the IP ownership investigation, we'll see if there is any flaws in the IP assets of the licensor. For example, if the IP to be licensing are owned by the licensor itself, or they do not invent the IP, but they do a license of the IP from a third party. In that case, we are going to see if they have the right to sub-license. And sometimes they don't have the right. So we are going to go through the agreements they have with the third party. Another thing we are going to do is to see if they have a very strong IP barrier. For example, if they have just a single patent, sometimes the single patent is not very stable and can be invalidated. So if they have a series of patents, we will see the patent portfolio to be of a higher value than a single patent portfolio. Another thing we are going to see is if they have a global IP protection, if their patent covers the U.S. market, the Chinese market that we are interested in. Sometimes they, if they are foreign companies, sometimes the territories they are interested in are not the same with the territories that we are interested in. So that could be an issue. And we are also going to see if they have a long enough patent term. If the term is just 2 or 3 years, then it's sometimes worthless because the clinical stage can take, for example, 5 years. And before the drug hits market, the patent just expires and the generic drug can enter into the market. So we are going to analyze a lot of different factors, like the number of the patents, the territory, the patent term, and we are also going to analyze the protection scope, the strength, the stability of the patent, and we are going to see if the patent has a broad enough protection scope so that other competitors cannot do easy design around. So these are the second part we are going to analysis, which is the IP barrier. And in the third place, we are going to do freedom to operate analysis. For example, if the IP they are going to license to us infringes a third party's IP, then it could be a huge issue because we cannot market our drug if that infringes a party's IP unless we have a resolution or have another license, and it will significantly decrease the value of decrease the value of the license source IP. So in the licensing project, we'll do a lot of IP due diligence and discover a lot of risks. And we're also going to see if there is a risk mitigation plan. If there is a good way to decrease the risk, then the value is still okay. If there's no way to decrease the risk, sometimes we just don't have the deal. From the licensor's perspective, it is the other way around. We are trying to sell at a very high price, and in that scenario, we are going to highlight the differentiation of the technology and the market value of the technology. We're also going to explore different application scenarios so as to find the right buyer of our IP. And we're also trying to see if the buyer has a good strategic synergy with our IP. If there is a synergy, then it could be a win-win situation. Sometimes it's very interesting when after the announcement of a deal, the market price of both companies could go much higher. And sometimes the pricing strategy is also dependent upon the corporate strategy. For example, when we're going to grow, in some scenario, we are trying to grow our impact and network through the business development with some very reputable companies. We can sell some IP at a relatively low price, but we want to have a good relationship with them. So maybe someday in the future we can have a bigger deal with them. So there could be a lot of different factors to consider it.
Yes, thank you, Ming. I think that we do have a lot of things to bring in such a. It's a small subject, but we have many things to bring up. But I do think that we can just put some spice in this discussion, because I do like too much litigation. So I was thinking maybe we can just bring something in regard to valuation and how we can place these methods for the decision-making process, meaning when we are about to fight about an infringement, or if we are just trying to decide on do we enforce or not enforce, which would be our, we have 5 minutes. Yeah, so I think that this is it. What would you say, how can we use the valuation as a tool to bring more clarity to the decision makers? If there is any value, of course, so this is something. So I just leave you all with this question. So maybe Taruna, just to change a little bit about the order, can you start from this,
sure,
please?
Yeah, sure. I'll share my thoughts first. So again, in our case, what happens is we're not necessarily looking at it from a litigation perspective, but we're looking at it from the perspective of decision making for various stakeholders in the organization. For example, on one side, we have the inventors. And as Alexander mentioned, every inventor would like to believe that they're coming out with the best invention in the world, right? So to kind of rationalize that and how the other party looks at it. So the other party that I'm referring to are basically the product owners, the teams that are building products and taking those products to the market, but they're using the patents that have been filed either by their own teams or by teams who have filed inventions which are relevant to those products, right? So how does this party, which is a consuming party, look at the valuation as a mechanism to saying that, okay, whether this IP is relevant for my product or not? And that is where we feel that the valuation aspect becomes more and more important. So that is how we as a company look at it. It's more for internal decision making by the product owners to consume that IP and to take a very patent portfolio backed product to the market, and then enhancing the brand image and the value of the product itself. So that's how we look at it.
Thank you. What can you tell us, Alexander, about these questions?
Well, I've worked 10 years in enforcement and anti-counterfeiting, and I know that, of course, IP valuation is always very helpful for damage calculation, for example. But for doing an IP valuation one step before that, when taking a decision whether to litigate or not, I honestly have not yet heard about that. So I never did a valuation for that purpose. But yeah, it's imaginable, but and then you would have to offset against the litigation costs. Yes, possible. It's possible. As I said, I do not have an experience with that, so I can say a lot of things to a lot of topics, but maybe for this specific topic, I'm not the best to address. I think same as with other valuation scenarios. As long as you make reasonable assumptions, as long as you have a model that makes sense, then, and that is the beauty of IP valuation. You can use it for so many different scenarios and things like that. So yeah, why not? Be bold, be courageous, and just try and do it.
Yeah, I'm creating I did something, but when we were just facing global litigation. So for this, we did a lot, I would say, and it helped us. It's kind of, if you succeed, it's okay. If you do not succeed, you will be buried because of the valuation. So you need to be courageous, definitely. So Ming, what can you tell us about this? Do you have any case that you can share or any experience about specifically using valuation for litigation, or to decide about going or not for a litigation? You are on mute, please. Yes.
Okay. Currently, I don't have very specific cases for or examples for the using of valuation in a litigation, but I think it could be a good factor to consider in the reconciliation. So, after infringement lawsuits, most of those cases are settled, right? So in the negotiation process, I think valuation could be used as a good benchmark or a good factor to consider.
Okay, thank you. So I believe that we have now, our time is just end. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tarun. Thank you, Alexander. And thank you, Ming for taking your time to participate at this event when you have a busy schedule as well. And thank you so much, Adriana, for taking care of this session.
It was a pleasure.
So, before we move on to the last part of the event, I would request our speakers and moderator for a quick smile looking at the camera so that we can capture the moment. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. So for the last part, we have a quick award ceremony. So some of the participants here, they have received some awards. So we'll just make an announcement that will be in the different room, and then we'll have the closing remark as well. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.